Okay. Hi, everybody. Here on Sunday, May 25th, 2025. And we are day 1758 days since Richard was forcibly removed from his barracks room. People ask me, how does that happen? Well, when it's your chain of command and a disgraced compromised CID agent that lost his badge, then, before he lost his badge, right? Then that can absolutely happen. So those are the witness statements that they saw several individuals forcibly remove Richard from his barracks room. So, and this is after severe continuous retaliation against him. Unjust retaliation. I mean, it's always unjust retaliation against a whistleblower. And lots more. Let's see if I'm on. Let's see if everything is working. It doesn't seem to be working. There it is. Okay. I got it now. Compromise CID. So, lots happening, lots of information coming out, lots of information coming in about Major General Clem Coward, his ties to Beto Rourke, and also Michael Ruggiero, Richard's first sergeant. So these ties are absolutely jaw-dropping, shocking again. And it's, continues to, this investigation continues to expose the corruption there on Fort Bliss that went unchecked. Not just that was encouraged, facilitated by the leadership. And, so we're watching very, very closely what is happening in Washington, D.C. When it comes to the treason that President Trump now has said was coming from those in the Biden administration. So he's using that big T word, the treason word, isn't he? He's using that word. And if it walks like a duck and talks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it's a duck, right? And, when you are aiding and abetting, facilitating a foreign country that is invading and embedding itself into our system. And, I had this discussion too with a friend that will use their occupation, their illegal, for most parts, it's an illegal occupation, to do harm to the people that live here, be it in healthcare, be it financially, be it criminally, just do a lot of harm. Educationally, you see Trump making a huge effort to go to address what's going on in our most prestigious universities that have been embedded with really enemies. And because they're up to no good. Anyone that reaches that kind of level of education understands what it takes to make a very successful to have a very successful country. And you can't have a successful country when one in every 31 school-aged children have autism. You can't have it, you know. Um, so, the mental illness going off the charts. Not only, and autism is not a mental illness, it is a condition. And President Trump absolutely called that out, that it is not natural. Something is causing it. Something external is causing the suffering. Anybody that has been around day in and day out, somebody that has autism, absolutely knows that they are suffering. These are suffering individuals. And so it is, it's causing a lot of, I can't say that I know what the feeling is, but when you're severely autistic, you will want to hit yourself. You will want to bite yourself. You will want to hit your head on the wall, on the concrete. Um, and I've had to bandage up arms of people that will want to bite themselves because of, it's kind of like when you're about to have surgery without any kind of anesthesia, you will want to bite into something hard, right? You'll want to bite a stick or something because of the pain. And so my take on spending time in the special needs classrooms with people with severe autism is that they're in pain. It's very painful. They're suffering, and so something is causing that, right? Something is causing that, and we have to, um, really first address that it is not just something you're born with, right? And President Trump absolutely called that out. And there's a lot of research. I don't want to really get into that, but there is research about all of this that puts it out on the table for discussion, and really, really interesting developments going on there. And so, my point is that there is an entity, a foreign and domestic entity, that wants to hurt the United States. And I think because autism is on, in the news right now with the Maha, it is a good example that they want to do harm, and they wanted to do harm on our military bases and our barracks, to our volunteer sons and daughters that were in the military. And you see President Trump going to West Point today, seeing the beautiful West Pointers in our beautiful uniforms. It was really something to see, and we need to protect them, and we need to be good mentors to them. And we need to have their back, right? Have their six, leave no soldier behind, so that they can be all that they can be. And, aspire with esprit de corps to the Medal of Honor ethos. I mean, these are bedrocks in our country, and this is, what makes America great again. So to see President Trump there is just really remarkable. Um, and to see all of our young sons and daughters, um, we just pray over them for a hedge of protection and wisdom, and we have to do our duty to hold the military accountable um, for what they did to Richard, what they did to Asia Graham, what they did to Glennon Oakley Jr., and many, many others. Even the witness in Asia Graham, that was another soldier by the name of Graham, not related. Um, um, that was uh, he was a witness in her case. And of course, Vanessa Guillen, Austin Hawke, you can, Enrique Roman Martinez, um, Elder Fernandez. You can go down the list. There's so many. And I have it on good authority that that list has been held close to President Trump, and getting accountability uh, is absolutely necessary in setting our country back to being a sovereign country, meaning because we've had these mutinies, right? We've had mutiny, and we've had this Trojan horse coming in, this cartel-tied criminal trafficking that absolutely has strings, very, very powerful strings, very strong strings to the CCP, to the CCP. And they have absolutely shown that they mean us harm. So that is really, um, the bottom line is that when President Trump was number 45, he was absolutely investigating all of this. He knows this. He was investigating all kinds of criminal trafficking and fraud, um, the contracts, the PACs, absolutely, with the politicians um, during his first administration. And that's why there was so much retaliation against him and his administration, including the Walmart mass shooting. The Walmart mass shooting was a way to divert attention from the audits and the investigations, the ongoing investigations into the criminal cartel-tied trafficking that was along the El Paso Mexican border, in that, and reaching into um, Fort Bliss, absolutely into Fort Bliss. And Richard's witness, his whistleblower report, aligned with what President Trump was finding at that time, what his administration was um, investigating, and you can see that he was absolutely moving forward with getting accountability at that time. And so that's where, this next information is coming from. There were ongoing investigations, there are cases, and it ties um, uh, First Sergeant Ruggiero and his wife, Gema Xóchitl, um, with Clem Coward, Major General Clem Coward, the commanding general of the 32nd ADCOM, with the uh, congressman, his term, Beto O'Rourke, and what was going on with the LLCs, with contracts. Um, and, we have some really shocking news about Gema. And, it's just, um, it is really an embedding in our system, in order to tamper, with files, in order to obstruct justice, in order to intimidate witnesses, in order to harass, in order to even falsify files and names, and accusations, in order to disqualify witnesses, or I would say make them an unreliable source. And this was all to cover for their very, very evil and criminal trafficking network. That included, of course, the children, of course, the illegal substances, of course, um, the weapons and ammunition and equipment and everything, things that the cartel would need. And we know that over 50% of the weapons that were going to Ukraine ended up in the hands of the cartels. And, so audits on Fort Bliss were very necessary because they've had a weapon problem, and they have discovered weapons in the hands of cartels that have come from the United States from weapons trafficking. And it's, just be prepared for the level of treason that is coming. Um, when you have the president of the United States calling the former president's team treasonous, right? Treasonous. It's very, very serious. And when you have the president of the United States 4 days after he took the oath of office for the second time, making sure that we had a declaration of that Richard was killed in the line of duty, which he knew when we got that, we would really think about what that all meant and research it and everything. And it absolutely declares that Richard was murdered in cold blood on Fort Bliss for his whistleblowing uh, that was in line with the ongoing investigations and audits. So it was a witness. He was a witness to what President Trump's administration was finding, and then was a whistleblower, was in communication with Washington, D.C., was in communication with FBI Houston, was in communication with CID, with his chain of command, with Child Protective Services, even with IG, and with 911 multiple times. So Richard bravely did that, and and they they had to, in my opinion, because Yvonne Rosales had that victory. You know, they knew they knew that she would investigate, and she did. She investigated El Paso Community Foundation, which is very tied to a lot of this, including the uh, fraudulent distribution of Walmart mass shooting victims' funds to unauthorized, unqualified individuals. And this money, uh, these victims' funds were more than $12 million. And the distribution, the false distribution of it is just so criminal, right? Because we are built on a trust of charity, right? We are a very charitable country. We're charitable to one another. We do a lot of giving in this country. We do a lot of volunteering in this country, and it's the only country that is a volunteer uh, um, culture. A lot of people don't understand. Say, "Oh, America doesn't have a culture because it's such a melting pot." Well, I say that the culture is a volunteer culture. That's who we are. We volunteer. It's no other country does that. Name me one country that's a volunteer country. We are the volunteer country, and without that, that charity, if that charity gets taken advantage of and is allowed to be fraudulent, like it is in the El Paso Community Foundation situation with the with the Walmart mass shooting victims funds, um, and we lose trust in that. We lose our culture. We lose who we are. And that means a lot of countries suffer because we give a lot of money. This whole thing with South Africa, a lot of money is given. Matter of fact, all of the chest beating is because of stopping the corruption in the giving, right? With the AUSAID, the USAID, right? Um, because people were taking advantage of the good nature of Americans, and we don't want that we don't want to lose that good nature. We don't want to lose our volunteer culture. We don't want to lose our giving nature. Uh, so we need to absolutely nip the fraud and we need to absolutely hold them accountable for those that are con artists that are attacking us in that sense, right? So, because what's South Africa going to do? Where are they going to go? Who's going to give them that kind of money? Who's Europe going to get the kind of money that we give them? Um, and the contracts, right? These huge contracts. And that's what was going on in El Paso is controlling um, the contracts to make sure tampering with the contracts really or the process, the contract process. And the so not only was there the criminal trafficking going on that was cartel-tied, there was the tampering with the process of the contracts that was going on, and it's worth millions and millions. So and Gema, the wife of First Sergeant Ruggiero, and I really have to talk about First Sergeant Ruggiero uh, quite a bit. And in the next few days, I'll talk more about him. But, he was Richard's first sergeant. He was supposed to have Richard's back. Um, he, Clem Coward, the general, allowed the first sergeant to use his wife to access information and to harass our family from the beginning. And everyone knows that. Everyone knows that Gema was on. We didn't know who she was. She didn't say, I'm the wife of the first sergeant, right? So this is so criminal, y'all. The impersonation, the harassment, the belonging to this group that even threatened us, um, that retaliated against us, and behind the scenes, what they have done is so criminal, y'all. So criminal. And so we have been very fortunate to get the names and what they've been doing behind the scenes. And so, you know, I just want everyone to be prepared with a positive attitude that this has to happen. This accountability has to happen. And, everyone, oh, we want the accountability. We want the accountability. If we wanted it bad enough, it wouldn't be so hard to get. Okay. It wouldn't be so hard to get. We are very afraid of accountability because we all know somebody somewhere that that has messed up, right? That has messed up. And so we're not always keen on the accountability. We really not. We always talk about it, but if we wanted it as bad as we say we wanted it, we would have it. Um, and so we have really been lax, and that's why so many deaths, so many really brutal deaths. And Richard's death was absolutely brutal. Okay. Um, and the cover up is brutal. And Vanessa Guillen's death was brutal. and the cover-up brutal. And Enrique Roman Martinez's death was absolutely brutal. And, so many. Austin Hawke's death was so brutal, and nobody in that barracks called 911, called police, called the MPs, called the command. Nobody called. Nobody came. They absolutely let him bleed out all night, and it was a disaster. Absolutely brutal. And same thing with Asia Graham and that whole situation. It's the everything needs to be. We need to face it. That's what it is. We need to face it. We need to hold these people accountable. And it's jaw dropping what they've done, what their positions are in the government, what their positions are. When you hear about Hema, she wasn't just making jewelry, okay? She wasn't just making jewelry. When you hear all of it, it's going to be it's going to be shocking. And you're going to see that it corroborates that this was a government cover up. This was an institutional crime and cover up. And that sometimes that is, you want to turn away. You don't want to hear it. You want to put your head in the sand. You're just like, oh no, this is too horrible. But no, we need to face it, and we need to hold these people accountable, and we need to have the courage to hold them accountable. We need to have the courage to face it and to hold them accountable. And this is what President Trump is doing at the federal level. And our case also reaches the federal level. He is absolutely holding people accountable. And you see the media, the fake news media, that absolutely 100% knew that Biden was not the president. Okay. And, he might have been the president, but he was unfit. His mind was not there. And they had the auto pen, and they had people lying to us, and the media propagated that lie. They propagated that lie while committing a mutiny and treason against President Trump. Okay? Absolutely. They did that through his first administration, and they were absolutely doing that during Biden's administration. It was, I don't know if you can call it a mutiny at that time, but it was absolutely treason what they were doing, because they were um, using Biden's administration illegally, absolutely illegally, and for the protection of foreign and domestic enemies of this country, um, that are sworn. A lot of these individuals are sworn to defend the Constitution, like Kamala Harris. Here she was vice president, and she's absolutely guilty of treason. And this is not me saying this because, uh, of a political one side or the other, even though clearly, um, sorry, I didn't put my hat on. Clearly, we're MAGA, and we're MAGA because that is where we see the accountability, where we see the truth, where we see um, law and order, right? Where we see um, addressing our economic mess that we have. And you can, a lot of people are, hoeing and humming and, or whatever. They want their cake and eat it too. We're in a mess. We're in a pickle. $37 trillion in debt. And we need someone with ideas, like the gold card idea, the $5 million gold card idea. We need ideas to get us out of this mess. And President Trump is the one that's doing it. He's the one that has the ideas. And he's getting it done. And we can't have the strengthening of a CCP that has really done a job on Mexico. And just look at Juarez, done a job on Mexico. And Mexico is absolutely beautiful with a beautiful culture, ancient cities, absolutely fantastic food, beautiful land, beautiful people. And the CCP ties to, or the strings, I call it strings, I should call them cables because they're so strong, cables to the organized crime, the Mexican cartels. It has just done a number on Mexico and Panama, right? And it's to see um, Marco Rubio going down. I don't know why I call him Mario all the time. I don't. Anyway, Marco Rubio to go down to Panama to absolutely address that situation, to address the situation in Mexico, which is not easy. Look at Scheinbaum's chief of staff was just executed with one of her assistants. Um, it's you have generals there that are being executed left and right, Mexican patriots that are being executed because of its war. It's war. It's this trying to control what developed this criminal trafficking, organized crime that is absolutely attached to the CCP. And those are not my words. That is where the evidence is. That's where the evidence is. You don't, I mean, when the signs are changed to Chinese, then you have to say, okay, this is not Mexican. This is not Spanish. This is not Spanish. This is Chinese writing on these signs here. Um, Something is very, very wrong. Who controls the Panama Canal? Who controls Mexico? And who is trying to control the United States? And who is controlling El Paso? And who is controlling Fort Bliss? And you see the absolute treason and mutiny coming out of Major General Clem Coward, and and of course Sean Bernabe and McConville and Mealy and all these generals. It's mutiny. It's treason. Um, and there's no doubt in my mind. I wouldn't come on here and say it unless the evidence was absolutely overwhelming. Overwhelming. Um, so Clem Coward, when Richard was in the line of duty, uh, when he was killed in the line of duty brutally, he did not he did not make sure that our family was contacted. No excuse. There was no investigation into Richard. The investigation into Richard did not start until September 1st, 2020. Um, that's because the evidence was allowed to decay, to dry up, to go cold, whatever you want to call it. They were very methodical. Um, they made mistakes, of course, but they were, these are trained law enforcement, uh, compromised individuals that have been doing this for a long time to a lot of other families, to a lot of other service members. And what they do is they try to discredit their victim. And they do that by running a smear campaign. And then they tamper with the files. And then they intimidate witnesses and tamper with witnesses. They harass anybody that is, curious and looking into the situation. They harass, they'll even threaten, and they'll go even further, right? So they harass, they threaten, um, they intimidate, they tamper, and they do a character assassination on the victim, um, because the victim is a witness. The victim is a whistleblower for calling them out, and you see that in all of these victims. Uh, Vanessa Guillen was a whistleblower, and she's this victim, and they tried to do a character assassination on her. Um, they absolutely did. And the same thing with Asia Graham. They do a character assassination on her. The same thing with Elder Fernandez. They did a character assassination on him. Enrique Roman Martinez, they do a character assassination on him, but he was so sweet. He was so sweet. They just couldn't get away with it, that they attempted. Same thing with Austin Hawke. And of course, with our son Richard, many more. Um, Lavina Johnson, they did a character assassination on her. So they do this so that the public, just thinks these are just troubled youths instead of volunteer sons and daughters of our republic that aspire to serve our country. And when they see something really wrong, they say something, or they are victims of the sexual assault or whatever. When all this happened with Richard, um, they they moved Major General Clem Coward um, over to the sexual assault. They moved him over to Sharp. Uh, Sexual harassment, sexual assault division, right, to help victims. Can you believe it? Can you believe it? And, that was not an accident. That was not, like mocking it. At first I thought, oh my gosh, they're mocking it, right? And it does mock the program. But it gives him access to every complaint, doesn't it? It gives him access to the complaints. It gives him access to the victims. And it weaponized to put him in charge of anything to do with Sharp is to weaponize that program against the very victims. And it is so criminal. And that's where he went. He went from 32nd ADCOM, commanding 32nd ADCOM, um, air defense, artillery, missile defense, right, to Sharp. That's where he went. And you can look it up. And he has major ties, still has ties in El Paso, ties to Beto O'Rourke, ties to Gema Xóchitl Ruggiero, ties to, and allowed the chain of command of Richard, and engaged in it himself, of character assassination. It's so criminal, y'all. It is so criminal. With the ties to Beto O'Rourke, which makes it very political because you see that um, President Trump was auditing, was investigating, and you don't have to take my word for it. You can go and search. It's all out there. You can look at old EOs. You can look at the EOs from 2017, 2018, what President Trump was signing, what he was trying to do. You can look at the investigations into Walmart. You can look at the before the Walmart mass shooting, the money laundering through the gift cards. You can look at many of the investigations that were going on with the contracts, with the criminal trafficking there along the border in El Paso. So, this is just, you just have to take a few minutes to look at it and put it together, and you put the dates together and you make a timeline, and you're like, wow. And then you see the connections between the official connections, between, Beto O'Rourke and Clem Coward and his family, and Ruggiero, right? Ruggiero and his family. So you have this first sergeant, that is just absolutely given, um, a green flag to harass, to commit crimes against his own soldier, and do this character assassination. Use his family, let his family do it, um, and put out a false narrative, because Um, they're connected in their own personal lives, in their own official lives, in their own professional lives. And so when this all comes out, just hold on to your seat, or sit up straight, face it, and because we're getting accountability, and it takes real strength to get the accountability. Okay. It's just, it takes a lot of strength to get to want to truly want and follow through with accountability. It really does. Um, so that's really the message. The connect. Can you believe that you have the Clem Coward, Beto O'Rourke? It's all coming together with the Hart family too. The Hart families, and I don't want to put too much out at one time because it gets kind of confusing. But the Clem Coward and the Ruggiero Richards. Oh, and just to remind you, when we have the audio, um, when we called First Sergeant Ruggiero to talk to him, to ask him a few questions about what was going on in the unit, because we were getting um, witnessed statements during our rallies. And we wanted to ask him these questions. He refused to talk with us. Now, where is that leave no soldier behind? Where is I have your six? Where is an army of one? Where is the Medal of Honor ethos, the esprit de corps? And we know, because of Richard and my dad confirming it, and that because Richard was a guidon, um, Ruggiero would play tricks, to destroy the esprit de corps in the unit. And we have other witnesses that corroborated that Ruggiero was not interested in esprit de corps and his unit. And my dad, and I kind of brushed that aside at first when I heard it a couple times, and my dad, he drilled it into me how criminal that was, and what that meant. So if you have no esprit de corps, then you have no army of one, you have no leave no soldier behind, you have no duty to defend the Constitution, because it requires it. It requires esprit de corps. So this whole thing, drilling in through the education system, and this anti-patriot, this, for our young people to not love our country, to loathe our country, right? And to talk about, false historical narratives, or historical narratives that leave out huge chunks of the story, so that you imagine something that is really uh, not the whole picture, you know. So it, the best way to describe this is uh, a false witness, because a false witness can absolutely tell the truth. They can say, "My wife took all my money. I have no money because my wife took all my money." But and that could be very true. But he forgot to say that these thugs came and threatened to burn the house if if uh, if they didn't pay his gambling debts, right? And so she had to take all his money to pay the gambling debts so their house wouldn't be burned down. He forgot to say that. He forgot to say that. See? And so this is what they do. They're real um in the media, right? They'll say a partial truth, but it just puts a spin that turns a narrative into a false narrative. And they leave out just such big part of it that you're left with a false narrative. You're left with propaganda. And so this is what absolutely has happened in the media. In Richard's case, in the Walmart case, they left out that Patrick Crucius's family was right there in the courthouse, the federal courthouse, right there in the DA's office, right there in the FBI field office, right there in Walmart cybersecurity, and in mental health, right? They left that out. They left out that Nadal Baim, not only is he the father of Bradford Bugado, but he's a Palestinian arms dealer. They left that out, and that he has a record, that he has a record, and that he's connected to the prime suspects. Um, it, they didn't tell, they just, oh, he's just nobody, they leave out the whole truth of Jonathan Ambrose and his connection with 143 ADA, and his time there, and his connection with the Harts and Rosa Maria Valdez Garcia, and his wife being Danae Katzen, right? They leave that out. They absolutely leave out where Gema Ruggiero, that she was the wife of First Sergeant Michael Ruggiero, and their connections, and um, their connections, and professional and personal, and to the side, so and they leave out that Clem Coward is connected to Beto O'Rourke, Beto O'Rourke's campaign, Beto O'Rourke's run for president, Beto O'Rourke, right? While um, they're being audited and investigated by Beto O'Rourke's opposition, President Trump. They leave that out. They just the media really is fake news. It really is the mainstream media, and we just really have gotten a big dose of reality, and it's kind of like that movie Matrix. When you finally get out of the matrix and you get this huge dose of reality, it's hard to take. It's hard to take, but we have to have faith. This is where our faith comes in, and I don't think the movie Matrix, did a good job with this. God is in control. God, God is in. God's got this, and I know you hear that all the time from people, but I can tell you from experience. Does that mean that we can just sit on our hands? No, we've got to work hard. Um, but we cannot be, trying to control how fast the speed of this is and who's going to do it. We had we had no idea. We did not expect that Marco Rubio would be the one investigating this. We did not expect that, that the State Department would be investigating this. Um, that Marco list, which I'll be talking about, it's huge. It is really, really big. Um, I'm just there's try I'm trying to learn about it so that I can talk about it. Um, because there's one thing about kind of understanding it and understanding the investigation, but you have to know this is all about El Chapo, El Mayo, all uh, the business and contracts and all of that was going on. It really makes um the whole Iran Contra scandal look like child's play. And so you have to kind of know who, like Willie Moya, that was years ago when he was killed. Arturo Alba, um, his death and his connection with the DA's office manager, um, um, Diaz, right? Um, Rene Diaz, Luis Rene Diaz, and his connection then with um, the usurper, Bill Hicks. So you have to understand all the dynamics. And so just thank you for coming on. Thank you for being patient. And we'll get all of that out. But know that there is ongoing investigation from the State Department, which is amazing, and I mean, this is a full force, um, you know, uh, ongoing investigations going on because it is such a big deal. And, when you have mutiny and treason at this level, and you have the president now calling it out, that things are happening behind the scenes because he would not call it out unless he had it um, going on behind the scenes forward, the accountability. So I've been talking all day. So thank you, everyone. It's almost 1 a.m. And, just have a great Sunday. And I'll be back tomorrow um, or today, later on today, God willing. Thank you so much, Anicia, for coming on and your prayers and your love. And thank you, Martha, for your prayers and love. Thank you so